There's a red marker sitting on a promoter's desk right now, and trust me, what happens next could change everything. Its tip is hovering over one number, and within the next 72 hours, that number could stay at 8, be cut to 4, shrink to 2, or disappear completely. But the craziest part isn't the pen itself, it's the person holding it. It isn't Clarissa Shields, it isn't her manager, and it isn't the attorney on her payroll. It's an executive she's likely never shared a meal with, sitting in an office she's probably never stepped inside, quietly scrolling through her social media in the middle of the night, like every single post is evidence in a courtroom. Stay with me, because what I'm about to explain isn't celebrity gossip or internet drama. This is how the business really works behind closed doors. This is the part fans almost never get to see. And once you understand it, you'll never look at boxing contracts the same way again. If this situation keeps moving in the current direction, Clarissa Shields could be learning that lesson the hardest way possible. But before we get there, we need to rewind and look at how this entire story began. Clarissa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She's also the undisputed champion and one of the biggest names in women's boxing. Back in November, she landed a reported $8 million multi-fight partnership with Salida Promotions and Wynn Resorts, a deal that looked like another historic milestone. At the time, everyone celebrated it. Social media exploded with congratulations. Even CBS Mornings featured her success. Meanwhile, Papoose appeared on Drink Champs talking about the attention surrounding her, adding even more buzz to the moment. The storyline seemed flawless. A hometown star from Flint had reportedly secured one of the biggest contracts women's boxing had ever seen. For several days, Clarissa Shields owned the internet. But here's where things started getting complicated. Because a boxing contract isn't just a paycheck, it's leverage, it's protection for the people writing the checks. Hidden inside most major contracts are clauses that many athletes never fully understand, even when lawyers are involved. Buried deep in those pages is one section that can completely reshape a career. It's commonly known as the morality clause, and whether Clarissa realized it or not, her recent online activity may have placed that clause under a very bright spotlight. Picture that promoter's office for a second. It's late at night, the room is quiet. A phone sits face down, silent. A laptop glows across the desk. A lawyer is only one text message away if needed. The promoter isn't yelling or panicking. He's calculating risk. Every new post from Clarissa changes the equation. Every response aimed at Remy Ma, every comment connected to Papoose's marriage, every public challenge or viral statement shifts the numbers. Suddenly, that $8 million headline doesn't look guaranteed anymore. It starts looking negotiable. Before anyone rushes to the comments, let's clear up what a morality clause actually means, because a lot of people discussing this contract don't fully understand how these agreements operate. A morality clause is standard language in many major sports and entertainment deals. It gives the company paying the athlete the ability to reduce, restructure, or even terminate an agreement if the athlete's conduct damages the public image of the promoter, sponsors, or the sport itself. The key phrase is public disrepute, and here's the part most fans overlook. That phrase usually isn't narrowly defined. In many cases, the people writing the checks have broad discretion in deciding what qualifies. Not the athlete, not social media, not loyal supporters, the promoter. That's an uncomfortable reality because many fighters only discover how much control they've surrendered after problems begin. Once that contract is signed, your public image becomes tied directly to the business behind you. If sponsors, television partners, or ticket sellers become uneasy because of your public behavior, decisions start getting made quietly. No dramatic press conference, no warning, just paperwork. Now look back at the timeline. Clarissa Shields signed her reported deal in early November. Shortly afterward, Remy Ma took to social media with allegations involving her husband, Papoose. Instead of stepping back and allowing publicists to manage the situation, Clarissa jumped directly into the conversation herself. She posted repeatedly, she publicly challenged Remy Ma to fight for $1. She joked that she was living rent-free in Remy Ma's mind. What could have remained internet gossip became an ongoing public storyline, and every one of those posts may now represent another piece of information someone inside a promoter's office has already reviewed. Let's go back behind that desk, because this is the part very few commentators explain. A promoter's primary responsibility isn't simply making fighters wealthy. Their responsibility is protecting the event, the television deal, and the sponsors who invested millions before the first punch is thrown. When an athlete begins trending for personal controversies instead of athletic achievements, executives don't just see headlines, they see financial exposure. Conversations about marriages, family drama, or social media feuds aren't always viewed as publicity. Sometimes they're viewed as a business risk. And business risk has a way of changing contracts faster than fans realize. If you believe a promoter will simply absorb that risk out of loyalty, you're misunderstanding how this industry operates. Business comes first. The contract comes back onto the desk. The promoter flips to the section most people barely skimmed before signing. And that's where the real power often sits. While the exact wording differs from contract to contract, the overall structure is remarkably similar across the industry. The language generally requires the athlete to conduct themselves in a way that protects the commercial reputation of the promoter, broadcast partners, and sponsors, while giving the promoter significant discretion if that standard is breached. Read that carefully. The judgment often belongs to the promoter, and that's exactly why this conversation matters so much. Here's the reality that changes everything. The contract says the decision belongs to the promoter alone, not shared, not negotiated, sole discretion. And that single phrase could end up carrying more weight than Clarissa Shields' punching power, undefeated resume, or even her 2 Olympic gold medals. That's the fine print nobody celebrates when the cameras are flashing and the oversized check is being held up for the photos. The uncomfortable truth is far less glamorous than the headlines. No matter how accomplished, historic, or talented Clarissa Shields is, one viral screenshot can suddenly change the conversation, and every new post gives decision-makers another screenshot to examine. Now, I already know some people are going to say, she's a fighter, trash talk is part of boxing, and that's absolutely true to a point. Muhammad Ali built legendary moments with his words. Floyd Mayweather Jr. mastered selling fights through confidence. Tyson Fury has made talking almost as famous as fighting. But here's where the pattern starts looking very different. When Mayweather talked, he usually targeted his next opponent. When Fury stirred controversy, it almost always revolved around the fight game. When Ali performed, everyone understood it was part of the promotion. But Clarissa Shields hasn't been directing most of the attention toward an upcoming opponent. Instead, she's been pulled into discussions surrounding a rapper's marriage, a man she isn't fighting, and a woman who isn't standing across the ring from her. That's exactly the type of shift that can cause lawyers reviewing morality clauses to start highlighting posts instead of fight highlights. Here's another part many fans never hear about. The purse announced at a press conference isn't always the amount that ultimately reaches the athlete. The headline figure is often the maximum opportunity, while the contract language determines what can actually happen behind the scenes. Between those two numbers is where negotiations, clauses, and business decisions live. Every controversial post has the potential to increase the perceived business risk. Every exchange with Remy Ma adds another headline unrelated to boxing. Every step deeper into online drama widens the distance between the headline number and the final payout. The contract stays the same on paper, but the practical outcome can look very different. Think about the timeline for a moment. Roughly 6 weeks have passed since the reported deal became public. During that period, much of the online attention has centered around family drama rather than training camp updates or championship preparation. Now imagine viewing that from a promoter's office instead of a fan's timeline. Millions of dollars were reportedly committed to building a champion's brand, yet the conversation keeps drifting toward personal controversy. That's where the sports business starts becoming less emotional and far more analytical. Once an athlete becomes a major investment, every public move can be measured through financial risk instead of personal intention. Somewhere inside a spreadsheet that fans will probably never see, there may very well be categories measuring media exposure and brand reputation. Each interview, headline, or social media post has the potential to influence those internal evaluations. It's not necessarily about feelings, it's about business calculations. Sponsors generally want headlines focused on championships, not internet feuds. Now let me explain why this matters, because some viewers probably think this sounds exaggerated. It really isn't. Large sports organizations often monitor public perception very closely. Public relations teams routinely track media coverage and online discussions, sorting stories into positive, neutral, or negative categories, while distinguishing between sports-related attention and unrelated controversy. If enough negative attention builds, those reports can eventually land on legal desks for review. At that point, attorneys typically begin by examining the contract itself, rather than immediately contacting the athlete or management. They compare the contract language with the public activity that's been documented and evaluate whether any provisions could potentially apply. If concerns continue growing, conversations sometimes shift toward restructuring existing agreements rather than canceling them outright. That word, restructure, sounds harmless, but in professional sports, it can represent significant financial changes. A guaranteed amount may become smaller, future payments could become performance-based, or additional conditions might suddenly appear where none previously existed. By the time revised paperwork reaches the athlete, the original expectations may already be gone. And finally comes the possibility nobody likes discussing. If negotiations completely break down, both sides could find themselves in court. Because many agreements give promoters broad contractual discretion, those disputes are often difficult, expensive, and unpredictable for everyone involved. Legal battles over reputation clauses rarely produce clear winners. Now, compare that general process to everything that's happened around Clarissa Shields during the past several weeks. If people inside the business are reviewing headlines, collecting screenshots, and discussing future options, those conversations almost certainly won't become public until decisions have already been made. That's why this story is worth watching so closely. You often don't see the business side moving until it's already reached your doorstep. But here's the angle almost everyone keeps missing. People keep framing this as Clarissa Shields versus Remy Ma, Clarissa Shields versus Papoose, or Clarissa Shields versus the internet itself. That's not the real fight. That's just the distraction everyone can see. The real opponent standing across from Clarissa Shields right now is the version of herself she's trying to become 6 months from now. It's the future payday she expected to collect. It's the legacy chapter she hasn't written yet. Every emotional post chips away at that future. And unlike a boxing opponent, your future self can't dodge those punches. Time is the real challenger here. Not Remy Ma, not Papoose, not social media, and certainly not the algorithm. And boxing has never found a champion capable of defeating time. Now step back into that promoter's office one more time, because this is where the human side of the business gets overlooked. The executive behind that desk isn't some cartoon villain plotting to destroy a fighter's career. He's running a multi-million-dollar business. He promised television partners and sponsors that Clarissa Shields would headline the brand he sold in boardrooms months ago. Now he's forced to explain why the face of that investment is dominating headlines over personal drama instead of championship boxing. That's not a comfortable conversation. And uncomfortable business conversations usually produce cold business decisions. Once emotion leaves the room, contracts start speaking louder than loyalty. We've watched versions of this happen before. Ronda Rousey experienced business fallout during her UFC run. Adrian Broner faced similar career turbulence. Tyson Fury survived his own storms because he had an enormous audience and enough victories to rebuild his public image. Clarissa Shields hasn't reached that level of commercial insulation yet. She's still expanding the fan base that was expected to justify reports of an $8 million agreement. And building a boxing audience through late-night social media feuds with a rapper isn't the strategy promoters invest millions to support. Listen carefully, because this is where emotions become expensive. Anyone can understand the urge to defend themselves online when their name is dragged through controversy. That's human nature. But there's a huge difference between being a fighter inside the ropes and being a professional outside them. The fighter inside the ring throws punches. The fighter sitting across from contracts sometimes has to absorb criticism without responding. That version of the job requires patience, restraint, and discipline. Clarissa Shields has spent her career mastering combat inside the ring. Nobody questions that. She's one of the greatest women's boxers ever. But championships earn applause, while business decisions protect paychecks. And right now, those business rounds may be proving far more difficult than the boxing ones. Industry veterans recognize this pattern because they've watched it unfold countless times. Conversations about restructuring contracts almost never become public knowledge. They happen quietly between managers, attorneys, and executives long before fans hear a single rumor. By the time the athlete receives the call, the numbers have often already changed. A carefully worded press release follows with phrases like mutual adjustment or revised agreement. And within days, everyone online has already moved to the next trending topic. Almost nobody covers restructures because they're quiet stories. Yet those quiet moments have ended careers faster than knockout punches. So pay attention over the next several days. I'm not claiming to have insider information. I'm simply recognizing a pattern that's played out repeatedly across combat sports. When an athlete under a major multi-fight agreement spends weeks generating headlines unrelated to competition and Clarissa Shields refuses to step away from the controversy, difficult business conversations often begin behind closed doors. Whether that has happened here is something only the people involved would know, but it's certainly the kind of situation promoters monitor closely. One moment that fueled the conversation was Clarissa publicly saying she'd fight for $1. Whether it was meant as a joke or not, it immediately gave commentators an easy comparison between her public comments and the reported value of her professional deal. That's exactly the type of headline communications teams generally try to avoid. So imagine that same office again. The red pen is still resting above the paperwork. No signature has been made yet. The reported $8 million figure still exists on paper. Somewhere on a laptop, there's probably a document tracking every major development connected to the situation. Maybe it's nothing more than routine notes. Maybe it's much more. Fans won't see those files because lawyers and executives rarely debate these issues publicly. What they often review are timelines, media coverage, engagement data, sponsor reactions, and potential business responses. Every controversial headline becomes another point of discussion. Every viral post becomes another factor to evaluate. Options may range from making no changes at all to modifying future terms if both sides ever decide that's necessary. Modern sports contracts are increasingly including detailed social media provisions that give organizations greater oversight of public conduct, and that's become a growing trend across professional athletics. Whether or not Clarissa's agreement contains those provisions isn't publicly confirmed, but many organizations have clearly moved in that direction. Before we wrap this up, here's the biggest takeaway. The moment your career becomes a major financial investment, every decision starts getting measured differently. Champions aren't judged only by victories anymore. They're also evaluated by how they manage risk, protect partnerships, and preserve long-term value. Right now, every public move Clarissa makes becomes another variable in that equation. Every post creates another headline. Every day of silence sends its own message. Every response changes public perception one way or another. She hasn't even completed the full run of fights connected to this reported agreement, yet much of the conversation has shifted away from boxing entirely. That's not about taking sides, that's about understanding how professional sports businesses operate. Numbers don't argue, numbers don't care about fan loyalty. Numbers simply influence decisions made inside executive offices. So here's the question I want everyone thinking about. Can Clarissa Shields steer this conversation back toward boxing before the headlines define the story? Does the promoter stay patient? Do future contracts across combat sports include even stricter social media language? Have we seen athletes successfully recover from similar situations before? And perhaps the most important question of all, is that system actually fair? While everyone debates the Remy Ma controversy, very few people are discussing the larger issue of how much influence promoters should have over an athlete's public image. That's the debate worth having. And if you think this story has already reached its peak, don't be so sure. There are still plenty of unanswered questions surrounding future interviews, sponsor relationships, media appearances, and whatever developments come next. I'll be watching every move, so check back, because this story may only be entering the early rounds. The red pen hasn't touched the paper yet. The reported $8 million figure still hangs in the balance, and somewhere, someone responsible for protecting a major investment is paying very close attention to every headline that comes next.